let's call the meeting to order, and let's do a roll call, please.
All right, Jennifer, can you do roll call? Are you set up? I know you were running a little bit behind. I can do it if you need me to.
If you can do it, I'm just getting my notes open.
Yeah, no problem.
I can write it down, but I can't read it out.
That's fine. So Kevin?
Present.
Okay. Barb?
Here.
Skip? I see you, Skip.
Here.
All right, Richard?
Here.
And Scott?
Here.
Jason? I do not see Jason. Megan, can you check the attendees to see if there's anybody in the public?
I have it open, 0 attendees. I'll let you know if somebody pops on.
Excellent. Okay, so Jason not here at the moment. Jill? All right, no Jill just yet. You can look out for her too, please. And
Okay.
that's our 7.
Okay,
So we do have a quorum.
We do have a quorum, 5 out of 7. Okay, the agenda is on the screen here. Do we have any questions? Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I motion to accept the agenda.
Thank you, Scott.
I'll second. Oh, wait a minute. I'll
Thanks,
second.
Barb. Thanks, Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion to accept the agenda is passed unanimously. With that, let's move on to the minutes. So
All right,
these are
I'll go
the-
ahead and screen share those.
Great. These are the minutes from the May 12th meeting,
Yeah, well, that.
I believe.
Just give me 1 sec. I'm pulling those up. I'm just going to start you guys there. Just let me know when you'd like to scroll.
Why don't we scroll to the next page there, please, Kelly? So as everyone may recall, the majority of the meeting of our May meeting was spent on the annual report, dealing with the graphics, the order of the graphics, the data, and specific comments. Skip, I don't know if you have any, you did the lion's share of the heavy lifting. I don't know if you had any comments on the minutes.
No.
Okay. And we were 4 minutes off. Actually, we were more than 4 minutes off. We were 34 minutes off, but we started late. Busted. Okay. All right. Any comments on the minutes from the May 12th meeting? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the May 12th meeting?
I approve. Yeah, I make that motion.
Okay, Richard, do we have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, Scott, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we have unanimity on the approval of the minutes. Okay. With that, I do not believe we have any members of the public present. Is that correct, Megan?
0 members of the public.
0 members of the public. All right, then we will dispense with reading of the preamble. So in follow-up to the May meeting, there was discussion at that meeting relative to change orders ad services. So ad services for design consultants and design services, change orders from the big bad contractors. And in terms of our expenditure review for this meeting, one item we wanted to drill down on in advance of the closing of the books for the past fiscal year. So July of 2020 through June of 2021. We wanted to look at change orders as it relates to the Measure H projects. So all that good stuff. With that, we'll turn it over to Kelly and Ray.
Great, thank you. So one of the things that we did, just to give a little bit of context, is about a year ago, we did a presentation for a board subcommittee. So those of you who do not know what that is, the Board of Trustees breaks itself down into smaller subcommittees. And those subcommittees focus on different areas to kind of drill down in detail. You know, some of them are on curriculum and some of them are on district finance. And there's one for facilities and technology. So we meet with that subgroup of Board of Trustee members and we talk about specific topics. So the topic of change order processing and how we manage change orders is something we did with them. So we were able to kind of dust off that presentation and give it to you. And you know, there are a couple of them out there floating around that are pretty valuable. So I kind of am kicking myself for not thinking of this sooner. But if there are other ones that come up that we've covered with subcommittee, we can certainly share those presentations with you as well, because they can be pretty informative and not everybody can make that. The subcommittee meeting is also a Brown Act meeting. It's public, but it's in the middle of the day, so it's difficult for some people to attend. So this, you will be seeing the same information that was given to the Board of Trustees on how we manage change orders, with the exception of one slide that we updated to our current budget numbers because the presentation was old. So I want to get Ray involved in walking you through the change order process, because he really leads the charge for all the other staff members for Van Pelt in managing change orders. And Ray can kind of give you the breakdown on what they do there. So I'm going to switch to a different presentation now.
Kelly, you said some of them were profitable. Them, are you speaking of change orders? Is that what you said? You said some of them aren't here, that were worth a significant amount of money. Is that what you just said? Is that
not to my knowledge.
Is that
no.
the them you were referring to?
No, I'm not sure exactly what you caught there, but no, I was not referring to any significant amounts of money. We haven't gotten to that part yet.
All right.
And Kelly, if I could just jump in, right? I do want to make sure, I mean, I understand there's a part of the presentation associated with how change orders are processed through the system. But we do want to make sure there's enough time to review the data and
Yes.
allow questions to be asked.
Absolutely.
You know,
it's a pretty short presentation.
Okay. Okay.
And then after that, the slide following that, if you haven't looked already, is a breakdown of the major projects in Measure H and how they stacked up change order wise. And Ray and I can answer questions about that.
Okay. Very good. Take us away, please.
Okay. So the crux of this presentation today will be helping the folks on this call to understand project contingency and understand change orders and how the CM team manages that. So this is my scary change order guy that I use when I talk to the board subcommittee. Anytime we talk about change orders, screaming man comes up. All right. So project contingency. When we start off on a project from the very, very beginning, you know, I'm talking about when you're budgeting for a project that hasn't even been designed yet, you often break yourself out 1% of the total allocation for project contingency. This is not allocated to any particular aspect of the project. It's not for construction or for change orders. It's just a 1% floating contingency that we often use for different things that come up. Maybe you need more survey work, maybe your architect costs a little more than you thought. A number of things may come up. And as the project progresses, that 1% is either used or it's absorbed back into the project on another budget item as you get toward the end. Then construction contingency, which is more what we're talking about today, often carries between 10 and 15% for unforeseen costs during the construction phase. Depending on the project, it might be a little bit more than that, but that's the target that we shoot for. So why change orders happen?
Hey, Kelly.
Mhm.
Is Napa 2010 another on your panel?
I'm not sure, that might be Jill. Can you unmute her just for a second so we can see if it's Jill? Hi, is this Jill Barwick?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Jill. Thanks for coming.
No, I'm sorry. I had some technical.
No problem. Glad you're here. You cut out there a little bit, but.
I think it was because once she said yes, I promoted her. And so then she,
Oh, got it.
so it was in the process of kicking her over. Sorry.
Okay, great. Types of change orders. I'm going to go ahead and turn this part over to Ray, and then Ray, you let me know when you're ready to advance. Cool. Oh, we can't hear you. We're full of technical issues today.
Well, Jill's showing up on the list of, in the gallery view, I guess they called it that, right?
Hello?
Yeah. Oh, there's Ray. Okay.
Hello?
You all set?
I think so. I thought
Okay,
I was
great.
before.
You're
Good to go.
good.
You can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for letting me join you guys. Appreciate it. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. Van Pelt, as a company, takes this very seriously. And I especially take a lot of pride in this process itself. So we work very hard on this, and we're proud of the work that we do. But like Kelly said, there's a lot of different types of change orders. A lot of different things cause change orders. There's the main types are listed here. There's the favorite unforeseen condition, and that's probably the most common thing that we run into, and that's what generates and kicks off a change order. I'll give you examples of these things so that you can more understand rather than just look at the label. So Napa, on almost every substantial project we've done at Napa, we have change orders that are associated with the soil. You guys have wonderful soil here for growing grapes. It is not great to build on. We often cannot get it compacted to the extent required to build something on it. So that requires remediation. That is an unforeseen condition. Regulatory agency change. Great example of that is a lot of our projects go out to bid before DSA has fully approved them. And there's that last round of review that DSA is doing where they will make comments that will add a little bit of scope to the project or a lot of scope to the project. That is a regulatory agency change. A design error and a design omission. It's funny that we have these listed. Our architects require or insist that we track them separately. An example of a design error is when the architect shows a bolt to attach two things together with, but let's say he specifies the wrong size bolt. A design omission is where the architect doesn't show the bolt at all. And then there's the owner change. The owner change is where we decide to add scope to a project, whether it be, wall covering or another color of paint. And that pretty much sums up most of the ways change orders get started on projects. You can move forward, Kelly. Negotiations. So negotiations, it's kind of a strange way to describe what we do in the PCO process because it's so involved. Negotiations take place when we simply can't seem to get on the same page with a contractor on a PCO, but most of it is just a more of a forensic dive into what is in the PCO and what is causing it. You can move forward to the next slide, Kelly. Okay, so this is in general the process. So we come up with an issue, let's say it's an unforeseen condition or an architect error or something like that. The first question we ask ourselves is this an actual change order condition? Is there adequate information in the documents that would equate to this being contract scope? So is the contractor responsible for it? Depending on the type of change, this is sometimes very easily answered. You know, unforeseen conditions, the soil's bad. Obviously, that's a change order. Sometimes it's not so easy to answer. Not only can scope be shown in the drawings themselves, but there could be verbiage in the specifications that make the contractor responsible for this scope of work. So if I've got verbiage in my specs that state that the contractor is to abate 200 square feet of asbestos, it doesn't have to be shown on the drawings for him to be responsible to abate that asbestos. Once we've identified that in fact this is additional scope, then we move on from there. Then we have to address how are we going to address the cost impact that the project is going to suffer because of this change in scope. There's generally two ways to do it. One is a lump sum proposal from the contractor. The other is we will track the work on a T&M basis. Most often our preferred method is a lump sum proposal from the contractor. As noted, detailed breakdown is required on all PCOs. So there's extensive breakdown of all costs required for every PCO, whether it's tracked on T&M or whether it is lump sum. One thing that's never really overlooked or probably underappreciated a little bit is the contractor pool that performs K-12 construction is relatively small. We know these guys. We know the contractors. We know the subcontractors. There are certain subs that we will never allow perform work on time and material basis, and we require lump sum proposals for them so that we can review them before they start the work. Some we have no issue whatsoever working with them on T&M, and whether we track T&M or go with the lump sum also has to do with how that change impacts the project. So if I have a change that is impacting the critical path to the project schedule, then I may opt to move forward on T&M to mitigate those schedule impacts, because schedule impacts are costly as well. But when we do track, go ahead.
Sorry, what's the critical path? Maybe you could explain that for those that don't know.
So, yeah, certainly. So we get what's called a critical path method schedule on every project. So the schedule on every project, so a large project, let's say River School, might have 1,200 items on a schedule that they are tracking. But only, let's say, 1/3 of those items really impact the critical path. These are things that this has to finish before that can move forward. Those are critical path things. So a PCO that would impact the critical path would be, you know, soil conditions are a great example. The soil's bad. I cannot continue with digging my foundation footings and building this building until the soil is mitigated. So that would be a critical path impact. So sometimes we'll opt to move forward on T&M to decrease the impact to the overall project schedule. So once we've decided how we're going to track the change, whether it's a lump sum or T&M, then we can move forward. If we do track on T&M, as Kelly said, I'm the senior project manager for the bond project, but we have CMs on every project. So on a big project like river, snow, that sort of thing, I'll have a CM that's on site 8 hours a day or more, just focusing on that project. When we track on T&M, that CM is verifying T&M tags on a daily basis, observing the work, and making sure that what we're being charged for is actually what is happening.
Hey, Ray, could I interrupt and ask another question real quick? Sure. If you have a if you have a CM on each site verifying tags, or the IOR is verifying tags, maybe share a little bit about why your statement about why certain subcontractors that you would not allow to perform work on a T&M basis.
Certainly. So first, you mentioned that the IOR was verifying T&M tags. We don't allow our RORs to verify T&M tags. My on-site CMs do all of that. We find that it's better to let the IOR focus on inspections, and we have our CMs that are going to be actually part of that PCO negotiating process out there, observing the work themselves. And I don't want to go and say that, you know, contractors are trying to get over on us with the T&M tags. T&M just doesn't work for a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys will, you know, maybe slide an extra truck in, round hours up, that sort of thing, and it gets really messy. T&M can get really messy, and then if you have a sub on a lot of T&M work, that also gets really messy and difficult to track. So there are some subs that we just prefer not to work on T&M with them.
And just to clarify, when we sign a T&M tag with a contractor, we are not signing that we agree to pay that money. We are signing that there is a guy there loading a truck with soil and taking it away. And then the discussion about what we pay for is part of the negotiation process. So all my guys are doing, or Ray's folks as well, are just saying, yes, there was a guy here with a truck loading soil. There's no dispute there. We'll later dispute who owes the money to pay for that guy. But there's no dispute that he was there.
It also gives us an opportunity to make notes on that T&M tag for future negotiations. One favorite sub that we have, and we had on every project, they provide company trucks for all of their guys, which is fantastic for their guys, but not so fantastic for us. We feel that's a business decision that company has made, and that company's made that decision with the knowledge that, you know, the clients they work for, I owe them a foreman's truck. I don't owe them 7 foreman's trucks. So we'll make notes on those T&M tags that we probably won't be paying for all of these trucks. And that's the type of thing that my CMs are doing when they're reviewing those T&M tags in the field.
Thank you.
Okay. And I actually want to go into a little bit more in depth on what we're doing with these PCO tags. Like I said, negotiation isn't entirely accurate for what happens once we get a PCO. It's officially submitted. It is more of an in-depth vetting of the PCO contents that takes place. The last slide said, you know, often we return PCOs for revisions. Just for context, there were 193 PCOs on the river project, and 56 of those 193 were returned for revision. Some of those 56 returned multiple times. But the things we're looking at on a PCO, I mean, let's just give an example of, let's say I'm adding 200 feet of 8-inch storm drain piping, okay? So what should 200 feet of 8-inch storm drain piping cost me? Is what they're charging me per foot for that 8-inch storm drain piping, is that industry standard? Is that what he's paying for it? How many man hours should it take to install 200 feet of pipe? And what hourly rates are being charged for those man hours that are being expended? Our contract documents basically allow the contractor on a PCO like this to charge us for what it cost him plus 15%. So a lot of our job is making sure that what we're seeing on that PCO is actually what it cost him. And once we've verified these things are in line with the contract documents, then we look at other angles. So does the addition of this scope eliminate any other contract scope? So now that I'm adding 200 feet of 8-inch pipe, is there 30 feet of 8-inch pipe that maybe now he doesn't have to install? So am I owed a credit for that 8 inches of pipe that now he doesn't have to install? one of my favorite things to do, and I'm shocked at how often this actually happens, is I look back at scope that was eliminated from the project, maybe from the DSA comment or something. And is there any information I can use from that credited scope? So for instance, let's say we eliminated 20 feet of pipe in another change order. Am I being charged more for the added pipe than I received in a credit for the contractual scope that we eliminated? You'd be surprised at how often, one, those numbers are different, and two, those things happen. But regardless of how a PCO is generated, T&M or lump sum, there are things we need to look at, other things we need to look at as well. So our contract documents allow the contractor to mark up their subs work 5%. So electrician gives the contractor a change order. That contractor can mark up that electrician's change order 5%. Are those numbers accurate? On self-performed work, the contractor can mark up the work 15%. Is that number accurate? Subs are allowed to mark up 15%. So is that number accurate? But the real negotiation on PCOs and change orders really happens at the end of the project, when everybody kind of throws a bunch of money on the table to see what they can get away with, and that's when the negotiation gets pretty intense. The thing to remember, especially I have to remind myself of this, and I remind my CMs of this all the time. The perfect job is where the contractor and the subcontractors are profitable. That's why they're here. Our entire relationship is monetary in nature. They're here to make a profit. The ideal job is where they make that profit. We get a good finished project. We're on budget. We're relatively on time. And this is so important. But those contractors want to work with us again, and they're going after our next project, and we're getting good pricing on that future work. That's critical to us, and that's something that we work towards on every project. Okay, what you're seeing here is the results of the Irene Snow project and the River Middle School project of that PCO negotiation that took place. And just to put this in context, also included in these numbers are value engineering that we did on the project. So instead of using this product, let's use this product. And there's savings realized there. We include those savings in these numbers. We'll get a PCO submitted to us that, in our view, is actually part of the contract scope. We'll reject that. Those savings are noted, are included here. A great example from the River project is we had two contractors. JLM was the modular contractor, and BHM was the GC on the overall project. We ran into bad soil on 3 building pads and had to completely rebuild 3 building pads. I received pricing from BHM, and in our view, the pricing was not reasonable from BHM subcontractor. We felt that we could get that work done for about half the price that they were proposing to us. We couldn't come to middle ground with them, so we went to JLM and we handed that scope over to them. And we ended up saving approximately $230,000 on those pad rebuilds, those 3 pad rebuilds, going with a different contractor. So that whole process on the River project saved us, $1,008,000, and on the Snow project, $1,063,000. And that's something. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, sorry to interrupt. I'll let you finish.
No, those are numbers we're really proud of. I think that that's one of the huge values we bring to the district. And again, both of those contractors, even though we were able to garner a lot of savings for the district, both those contractors walked away. One of them is working with us again and has worked with us again multiple times, and the other one would be happy to.
Would you say both River School and Irene Snow were similar projects, both a bit of new build and a bit of renovation, or are they different?
Yeah, they are different. So there was renovation on both projects. There were modular buildings and an overall project general contractor on both projects. The biggest difference was there was less modernization on the Snow project, and there was much more modular buildings on the Snow project itself.
So Ray, I have a question for you. On the Irene snow, was that approved changes within the 10 and 15% of the total cost? I mean, it's
Um,
380
We're gonna get to that in the next part of the presentation, Richard. We have a whole section on that
okay.
coming up.
And I'm glad you do, because you didn't tell me to look that up, Kelly.
Yeah, sorry.
So I know you already have.
I already have that information. We're gonna look at that at Measure H as a whole in the next portion. This part was really to have you guys understand the differential between what is initially thrown out on the table and what we whittle that down to.
And just, I did take a quick peek at the Napa Junction project, and we're tracking about the same amounts there, even though that is a much larger project. Opportunities for savings on a project like that is different because the delivery method is different.
So if you have any questions about the change order management process, feel free to ask them now. And then after that, we'll transition to kind of what Richard's question is. And I know what Kevin was interested is the metrics on where we were at with change orders at different projects.
Ray, I assume this is a similar discussion relative to ad services from designers, that you guys handle that negotiation as well. And
We do. They're usually far less complex than a PCO from a contractor. It's considerably less complex, and typically we like to use the errors that the architect has made on the project as a cudgel.
right.
To beat them with mercilessly when we get ad services. But yeah, it's very similar.
And Kevin, I will be giving the committee information on ad services. Full disclosure, that was something that Kevin had requested, and I'm going to have to provide that in your folder. And if you guys want to go into that information at the next meeting briefly, I can do that. It just, with summer and close of the fiscal year, pulling all of those ad services was kind of a heavy lift for staff. So we will definitely get you that information. But yeah, it is, it's something we have to do, but it's not quite as big. But we actually, I think, Ray, I even have a presentation that we did for F&T on design ad services too. So that might be something we can share with you in the future too. Not quite as complex, but.
Yeah.
Right, but just to set the table, right, and we don't have to go to it here, right? But often in construction, one hears only about the change orders from contractors or during the construction phase, and there are change orders from designers and consultants during the planning phase and the construction administration phase as well. So, all right,
I just, off the top of my head, Kelly, I obviously don't have anything sitting in front of me, but I think that our ad services in Napa have been relatively mild.
Mm-hmm.
Anything egregious, like I said, we use everything we can against them. We've got great designers and great contractors in Napa.
And to give you guys an example of what that means, that's, if you're sitting down with somebody and you're going to talk about this ad service they've thrown out on the table for, $75,000 or something. We will say something like, I understand this, but I need you to go back and look at this a little closely, because I want to remind you that you have some stuff listed here for coordination on structural on building B, and your mistake on structural on building B cost me $30,000. So, I think you need to go back and rethink that number, and consider that. And so, and in design teams also, even more so than contractors, want to have an excellent relationship with districts, because they really get their, the selection process for a best value for a designer is far more subjective than a hard bid contractor is. So they really want to make good on the districts and keep that work. So that negotiation tool works really well.
And again, it's this K-12 industry is very small. It's the same players over and over and over again. So it is very important to them.
I have a question. You say the subcontractors are allowed 15%. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And 5% then for the primary contractor, it's added onto that as well?
Yeah, 5% for the primary contractor on a sub's work or a supplier's work. The contractor, if they self-perform something, they are allowed that 15%.
So do the subcontractors work with subcontractors as well? So they get to add 15% as well?
Oh, second
Yeah.
tier subs?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So everybody involved is adding their layer of profit.
So said differently, right? If you have the test and balance guy underneath the mechanical sub, and you have a change order affecting the test and balance guy, the mechanical sub would submit a change order request with 20% markup, 15% for
correct.
the sub tier, 5% for the 5% for the mechanical guy on top of the sub tier, and that's typical.
And just for the non-industry folks here, that markup, it's their overhead and profit, just like any business. You know, it's paying for their folks in the office for the coordination that they need to do with those multiple subs and things like that. And to Ray's point about wanting to be profitable, it's fair. They're owed that money to run their business.
And like I said before, we want them to profit. We're not here to hurt anyone. We just want them to profit within the confines of the contract documents.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That's not a percentage that we pull out of the air or what we think might be fair. It's what's in the contract.
Yep.
All right, so moving on, I created a little matrix for you guys so you can see where the various projects landed as far as change orders are concerned. And the average for all of the major Measure H projects to date is 10.8%. You got a very big up and down depending on the type of project. As Ray briefly explained, Irene, Snow, and River, you see that they're doubled because they each had 2 contractors. And you can also see some examples of where we shifted scope. So you can see how one contractor has a much higher percentage and one has sort of a low percentage because sometimes scope was shifted from one contractor to the other. But you guys can take a look at that, and that's kind of where we're landing with the program right now.
Any high level, I mean, without getting into the minutia on a project by project basis, but any high level of the 10.87%, E&O is 2%, owner changes are 2%. Is there any allocation there?
The only, and Ray, you can jump in here too. The only thing I would say is that typically your E&O of the contract value is typically less than 2.5%. So it's a pretty small amount. And your biggest one is going to be unforeseens. I don't know, Ray, if you want to get.
Yeah, so we do have all that tracked. It's not something I looked at before the meeting. I can do that. And some of the stuff that is listed here is some legacy stuff that probably was already rolling down the road before we got started. So I have a hard time looking that up. But I know that the larger projects that I've been involved with, Irene, Snow, River, Napa Junction, we're well below that 3% number, that 2.5% number for E&O, considerably lower.
And presumably let me back up, the I'm sorry, differing site conditions, concealed conditions, that's your largest category, I'm assuming?
Yeah,
The largest
unforeseens.
category?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And as you can imagine, that's different compared to the different types of projects you're doing. If you're doing a modernization or what we kind of call a green field, Kevin knows that that's the difference too, is a lot more unforeseens when you're modernizing existing.
And delivery methods as well. I mean, you look at Napa Junction, brand new campus, greenfield construction. There's not a lot of unforeseen conditions on there.
And what was the procurement methodology on Napa Junction?
Lease back.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the other benefit,
GMP.
the other benefit there is there's a GMP. They have a seat at the table when they build their contingencies, when they look at constructability and all that kind of stuff. So that's a huge difference than, let's say, your worst case scenario, which would be a modernization hard bid, where you hit those 2 markers. And it's very much a game of pay now, pay later.
Right. So it may maybe said a slightly different way, right? If you look at Napa Junction, the contingency is rolled into the original contract value, or a large portion of the majority of the contingency is rolled into the original contract value. Whereas like the seismic projects were that was just hard bid, as you say, Kelly, the contingency was carried on the owner's side, right?
That is correct. But even so with the lease back like at Napa Junction, because it was a greenfield and because of the collaboration,
right,
those contingencies
right,
are even smaller as well. Mhm.
Right, okay.
I have another question. What is the effect of the price of raw materials in the last year done for the project still in has that caused a lot of problems? I mean, you read in the paper that price of lumber has gone up 300%.
So on the projects you're looking at right here, there's been little to no impact.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the projects you'll be looking at in the future, like American Canyon Middle School right now, that project is being impacted considerably by those material costs. Unfortunately for the contractor,
Fortunately for us.
fortunately for us, he was under the contract before any of that started. So he's working through those issues on his own.
He's not going to give you change orders for that too?
Not because of the because of the delivery method. You might have heard Kevin say a second ago, GMP, guaranteed maximum price.
Yeah.
And so with a design build project, when we hired Arntz Builders PBK, who's our design build entity, they locked in their price in wherever, don't quote me on it, but it was like September or something of last year. When we inked that contract, unless we came back to them and said, do this, do that, add a room, add a wall, or to Ray's point, if there is an undocumented condition, but generally speaking, the price of lumber going up, them having procurement issues, those are not our issues to deal with.
I understand, but you also said that you try not to run your contractors out of business.
No, we don't. We're being cooperative with that contractor. There's some design changes he wanted to make that lowered his costs. We were fine with that. The biggest thing for me is I still get a quality product, and when I look up, it looks exactly the same, and it doesn't fall on anybody's head. So we're being cooperative with them. We're letting them mitigate their costs. So you know that we don't ever want to step on anyone's neck like that. But at the same time, it's really not our problem on that project. On the mod projects, the campus modernization projects, we were impacted by those material costs.
But you won't, just to be clear, in the change order discussion is different than your overall project budget discussion, right?
Yes.
Because change orders are what's happening while the project's going on. And again, because those are lease back projects and we have our people at the table early, they're setting contingencies, they're looking at the issues and doing the best they can to mitigate change orders on the project. But when they go out to bid their sub-trade packages, which they did in the spring, yes, we were definitely impacted by those upcharges and the delays. You know, time is money. So when you can't get materials, it's the same as paying extra.
To your point, though, it would not surprise me that at some point during the process and during this whatever we're dealing with right now in the industry, if someone doesn't hand me a change order that says there's no way I could have foreseen this.
Yeah. But the delays too, that's the real thing right now. Things
Yes.
you just can't get things.
And I was just telling Kelly earlier that I have never in my life heard a paint supplier tell me that they cannot give me that much paint.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the supply chain is pretty jacked up right now.
Yeah. Never thought I'd hear it with paint, though. I always thought that there was an endless supply of paint.
The first energy crisis that was the problem back in those days.
Okay. Other questions? All right. Back to you, Kelly and Ray.
All right. So another question that came up at the last meeting and something that Kevin had brought up is he wanted to get some more information on the contracts that have been approved for our management services for VPCS. So in your folder, you also received those 4 agreements to date. And you can see what I did is I threw them into a little fun bar chart for you guys. And I also projected next year's. It is solely a projection. just so that you guys can understand where we're trending. By no means a commitment. Maybe Mike hits the lotto and wants to donate 20 million to the district and we build a new project or something. I'm sure that's what he would do if he won the lotto.
Exactly what I would do.
So, so that gives you guys a little bit of information on our services to date. What I would say is the graph kind of tells the story. When we arrived here in 1819, as you guys well know, we're very much in the thick of the bond program. Lots of projects going on, lots of money being spent. As the district has less projects and less going on and their bond tapers, as does our service. So that gives you a little bit of idea. The fees go down because just there's less to manage. We staff with less folks and there's less going on, so we charge a district less.
Would this mirror the spending as for this 5 years? Would it essentially mirror the spending as well? I mean, we're the first of the bond issue.
Yeah, it probably would to a certain extent because, a bond in general is like a bell-shaped curve. And what you're seeing is half of the bell for our fees because we came along, as you well know, once the bond was already in progress. So yeah, I think that probably it would match that. Our spending, Kevin and Barb and I, when we did the agenda planning, talked about that too. Our spending in general in Measure H is about to significantly taper after this summer. We paid out a huge chunk of our money with the past projects, and now we're doing the last of the campus mod work, and we're looking at much smaller projects in the coming year and the year after that, and really getting down to finishing up fencing, which, as you know, is a pretty small allocation. We have about $2 million left to spend on fencing. We will be doing future campus mod work out of funds that are state leveraged funds, so they won't be Measure H funds anymore. We have a couple of more field projects to do, so a couple million to spend there. So I mean, you're really talking like under 10 million of Measure H funds getting expended, with the exception of the technology piece, which has some bucks left there as well. But as far as hard construction going on, we're really sort of getting to the end of it. And the funds are now going to be tapped from other resources within the district.
What's your rough estimate of how much Measure H funds will be remaining after this summer construction season?
Our campus mod allocations will be done. We'll be funding them out of state funding next year. We're done with Measure H funds at all of our kitchen projects. Anything with kitchen, sorry, I'm working backwards on where there isn't money, and then I'll get to where there is. We're working, so kitchen projects are going to be funded out of other sources moving forward. We've got some left. The contract that we just did for management for Van Pelt will eat up a little bit of that allocation for Measure H remaining for management, including a couple other consultants that we use. We have a consultant for finance and facilities. We have our funding consultant and some of our software programs. So we'll eat up the last of the Measure H allocations and then again be working off state funding money after that. And really the leftover funds will be fencing, about 2 million plus. I just said the other one and now my mind is going blank. What was it? Fencing and, oh shoot, you guys, I had this.
Campus mod, kitchens.
Fields.
I'm looking for fields. Thank you. Whoever said that. I appreciate that. Sorry, here I found my notes as we were talking there. So yeah, I mean, most of our seismic work is all of our seismic funds are pretty much wrapped up. So it really is fields and fencing and technology that will be Measure H funded from here on out. So it's a pretty small dollar amount. A couple million with each.
Yeah, I have a question. Why is this dumb? Why does the program management percentage change in the 5 years?
Because the amount of work that we manage changes, and from time to time, the scope of what we do changes. So when we initially got here in 1819, you guys, as you well know, Jen Gibb was doing a lot of what I do now. And so
That's what I- yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry,
why
say again?
That's why the first year was lower than the second year was higher, a lot.
Well, so it was about the same, because the other thing at play is it's not just the role that myself and, you know, Melanie and Jennifer both help me too. Jennifer also runs construction, but it's also the staff. When we arrived in 18 and in 19, lots of construction going on. So I had lots of staff members. I think at one point, Ray, we had 10 people working at different projects doing different things. One or two of them might have been part-time. So that jumped up a lot. Then as we moved into 1920 and then into 2021, the program management responsibilities got a little bit more robust when we transitioned, when Jen took her other position with King, and the staffing for the CM projects started to taper too. And then as you can see this year, it tapers significantly just because, as I just said, we're just have less projects. But unfortunately, for a little while longer, you have to put up with me.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Kelly or Ray, any other presentation comments?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not from me.
I think it's important for everyone to know though that one of my functions is to oversee Kelly and Ray and the Van Pelt construction services. And so we have a high level of interfacing that we do. We definitely meet at least once a week formally, but then have a series of when needed meetings to take place to discuss numerous issues in regards to the construction projects that you see there. I'm certainly not inundated with every single little detail, but Ray and Kelly are both very good to say, okay, we need to go to the district and talk to them about, question this concept, this, or there's a question about this, or this change order on this, so that we're getting direction from the school district. So I just wanted to make sure that the bond oversight members understand that there is a level of supervision and that the district does provide working with them. So anyways.
Yeah, and that's, Mike, that's a really good point, because I think another thing that is I know is important to this committee and other people outside in the community have asked this question, which is, you don't want us walking away with all your information. So some of the ways that we make sure that that doesn't happen is, we have a live shared file database, everything gets filed in it. And more on a personal level, we don't have a lot of decision-making meetings on the bond program level or big decision-making meetings with a particular construction issue without somebody from the district in the room so that they have that historical knowledge. Mike's administrative assistant, Marie, is also involved in a lot of the things I do. Sometimes I'm just like, hey, we're going to do this thing where we create a DSA tracking number for a project. Why don't you come sit down next to me and see how it's done? Because we know we're not going to be here forever. And we will not have done our jobs properly if we leave and, the district never passes another bond, which would be horrible. But if that happens, we want to make sure that Marie knows how to generate a project tracking number in DSA. We want to make sure that they remembered why those different decisions are made. We want to be good business partners, and we want to make sure that they're armed with the information they need. It's really important. It's something we talk about a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's move on to our next agenda item. Project updates. Mr. Pearson.
Yep. So I'll turn it over to Kelly and Ray with the project updates. But what you're going to hear today is what's happening at Alta Heights, Donaldson Way, the Napa High School gym, the Silverado Middle School gym. Those are the main things we have going on. We have a couple of the projects that have been happening as well too, but those would be the main ones to have them highlight. So I'll let Kelly and Ray take it away on the project updates.
All right, so we're starting you off at Alta Heights, and it is mass pandemonium over there. If any of you live in that neighborhood or have driven by, it's nuts. I don't know if Ray, if you want to briefly take them through the scope of work at Alta Heights.
Sure. Well, it's mostly it's an HVAC upgrade, and funny thing is with these things is you know, DSA regulations, they don't allow you to just improve your HVAC system. Whatever you do to your HVAC system, it always triggers ADA upgrades. So the main focus of this project is exterior paint, HVAC system upgrades, and ADA compliance. And that's new roofs as well. I'm sorry. And that new roofing goes along with HVAC too. And you know, it's been a tradition in K-12 campuses that we, if we have a piece of conduit to run, we like to run that on the roof. So if you can imagine, anytime you re-roof, all that conduit comes off, and all that conduit is full of wire that powers something or a data cable that communicates with something. So the mad rush right now on these campuses was to get the roof off, identify the dry rot, fix the dry rot, get the roof back on, so that on the first day of school, when they turn the light switches on, they actually work. So, and that's what's going on there. Wright Contracting, I have to say, has so far done an absolutely fantastic job. The partnerships that they have developed with their subcontractors and the cooperation that they are garnering is impressive. That being said, this is a ton of work to pack into a summertime, but right now, doing great.
Yeah, just to touch on that, so the committee understands too that, so Wright Contracting, relatively local firm, they're based out of Santa Rosa, not a multinational firm or anything like that. But what's really cool is their two main subs, their HVAC and their electrical, all local Napa contractors. So their HVAC sub for all their sites is a Napa contractor, and we have two electrical subs on two different sites, both Napa contractors as well. So kind of cool that we're, when possible, to keep that business here in the Valley. It's pretty nice.
And to speak to that coordination Ray was mentioning too, we learned, you know, last year we were dealing with COVID. We had Wright doing some jobs on us. We got lucky in some ways that COVID hit, because from at least a timing of getting the work done in a timely manner, we were able to, you know, use some of we were able to slow, not I would say slow down the project, but let the project finish out without having to worry about kids being on campus and staff being on campus initially. But knowing that, we set up right away with Wright weekly meetings with the schedule, and Ray and Kelly and I had long discussions over, we need to make sure we have boots on the ground at these sites on a regular basis, so that we can meet this compressed timeline, because we will be opening up school on August 18th. Teachers will be coming back on August 16th, and we need to have everything buttoned up as best we possibly can so that they can do their job. So we've done, I think, a really good job of working with Wright, and they've done a good job as well of understanding like this is a different environment this summer than it was last summer.
Absolutely. So as you can see too, when we touch these campus mod projects, we also give them a new coat of paint, which goes a long way if you've seen Bel Air or Northwood, which are the two that we did last summer. Just that new asphalt shingle roof and the new coat of paint, and getting those HVAC units off the roofs and on the ground and caged really changes the look of the campus. So we'll be excited for you guys to drive by when these ones are done as well. Kind of the same story over at Alta Heights, pretty much identical scope of work. Same craziness going on. Did I say Alta Heights? I meant to say Donaldson Way.
Yeah.
Sorry. Same scope of work going on. You're looking at a picture here from the inside. You can see, because, you know, they're adjusting vents and ductwork and all that kind of stuff too. And then you can also see all those old rooftop units. Those were off the roofs. What, Ray, the first week of summer, the first like 4 days, it was crazy.
Yeah, within the first 2 days of summer, they had almost everything off the roof.
Yeah, and they already had painters.
Yeah, it literally, you guys were taping off windows, and not recommended to walk around those sites and walk, you know, out from underneath the canopy without something protecting your head, because stuff was flying off of those roofs.
Yeah, so we got a really strong start out of the contractor at both of these sites. They're definitely the most crazy. And you guys, if you have any questions about the projects, feel free to just chime in.
I have a question. On all four of these, Did they have, you said HVAC, was there AC there before?
It depends on the location. And Jill, I see your hand, so we'll take you next. I just wanted you to know I saw you there. So yes, most of the buildings have AC. It is not a district standard or history to put air conditioning in the gymnasiums. So so that is maintained status quo.
Sorry, Richard.
Almost the vast majority of the buildings on these sites have air conditioning. Okay, Jill, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, the government, the feds and the state have money for the schools to improve the ventilation, which I would assume would include the air conditioning. So is there any possibility that instead of using the bond money to do all this, that you guys are able to glob on to some of that other money for which that's the purpose of it?
Yes, so we are working with our funding consultant right now. It was called AB 48 or something like that. It's now called SHAPE, which is some sort of an acronym for that funding source. And we've started the initial process of registering online, and we're working with our funding consultant to get reimbursed for as much of that work as we possibly can. And I think, Mike, if I'm not mistaken, that also includes some of the work that your own guys did, replacing filters and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And Jill, we have to front the money. The state or the federal government never gives you this money and without some kind of strings attached. So we have to front this money, and then there's some sort of formula that's applied to allow you to recoup some of the expenses. I don't think we'll see 100% of it, but you also have to remember too that everybody in the state of California is trying to get in line for this sort of stuff. So we're hopeful we'll get some kind of money back, but how much, I think it's too premature to kind of guesstimate how much. But we're hoping, that we do get, like I said, some of this money back, so then we can then apply it to future projects.
The money, was this money from the middle school? We didn't know. Is that where this money for these 4 projects come from?
A portion of it did, Richard, Kelly alluded to that we're using some of our other funding sources as well too, to do this, but the majority of this, yeah, I'd say the majority of this came from that and other ways that if we save some money on some other projects.
Yeah, because some of these you weren't going to do, right?
No, exactly.
Absolutely.
No, we did take it when the middle school, when this district decided not to build a middle school in American Canyon, we had at the same time simultaneously close to that had already done a roofing assessment of all of our schools, and that's what helped drove us to determine which sites that we were going to go after, whether it was to replace the roof. And obviously we had HVAC on top of the roof, so we said, well, let's replace the HVAC at these particular sites. So we, all of our sites, I shouldn't say all of our sites, several of our sites need help with the roof. The ones that we did last year and that we're doing this year had the highest ranking, which meaning that they had the worst roofs in the district, but they're all kind of bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They leaked.
Yeah, they did leak.
All right, well, we will take you over to Napa High, where we are doing a window replacement. I don't know how familiar this group is with the Napa High gym, but if you've been there in recent years, this is the first time you've probably been able to see out a window. I know Barb can attest to that. And I know Richard's probably spent a lot of time with the basketball program in the gym. So pretty darn exciting to stand inside there and see natural light coming in, even though the windows aren't there yet. It gives you a good idea. You can see also we're in the process of repainting the interior. So the focus of this project was to replace the windows on all 4 sides of the main gym because some of them had glass block that were well beyond the end of its life. And in a number of places, the windows were just simply boarded up. So there was no natural light coming into the gym before. So we're replacing those glass blocks and boarded up windows with a new durable window wall system that'll go into all of these openings. And while we're there, we're going to completely repaint the interior of the gymnasium. and just do some general cleanup. Just like with our campus mod projects, when you do this, the state makes you do disability access. So there is some site work that'll be going on to ensure we have good ADA access. And there are some renovations going on to the restroom to make sure the partition widths and turnarounds and access for disabled folks is all maintained. So that's something that's required whenever we go to the state with any kind of a project. So the look of the Napa High Gym in this coming school year is going to be extremely different.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So one of the problems with the gym has always been the sound and the acoustics in the gym, which was the reason that those ballasts were all hung from the ceilings to help with the sound when the new sound system or various sound systems have been put in the gym. So are those going to go? Have you looked yet at the acoustics in the gym during with the ballasts down? Because that clearly that was why those were put up.
Yeah, we've been, Ray and I, and well, Kelly too, have been discussing that very topic, Barb, because I remember when those panels were hung
Yeah.
in the gymnasium, and I know that is an issue with the acoustics, and we have been working with our design team to alleviate that. It won't be we will not be hanging those panels back up. We'll be using a material, I think it's called Tectum, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And which is a pretty good product that absorbs sound really, really well. And then, obviously if we have to make some adjustments, we will look into that. But I think we feel pretty confident with what we're finding from our design team as far as, how to mitigate the acoustics in the gym.
And is that something that affixes to the walls of the gym?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And surely the technology is much better than it was when those panels were put up.
Yeah, because those panels were, I think, put up in the the late 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Early 2000. Yeah.
Was it 2000?
Well, they were there. Mm-hmm.
I want to say, well, I remember there was a assistant principal named Jeff Anderson, and they came with his wife, if I'm not mistaken, who was in it.
Yeah. So
that's when they came about. I don't know when he was an assistant principal, but that was.
Yeah, it was during the centennial year when we had the centennial Indian. That was all at the same time.
Okay.
And that was 97.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, late 90s.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So yeah, what we'll be putting back is more of a permanent fixed to the surface of the wall type product rather than those panels, which were sort of like almost like hung like pictures.
And fortunately in this gym, we have some big wall spacing opportunities to put this Tectum material up. And so Ray and I have talked about how much and where we're going to put it up. And I've offered that more is better than not enough. So we just need to put enough to make sure that it's not going to be too bouncy in there with regards to sound.
Yeah, cool.
And when we're done, there's also going to be a blue and gold accent wrapping around the gym. So it's going to look pretty cool, and worked with the campus to incorporate that little bit of school spirit inside the gym.
Yep.
All right, last but not least, Silverado Middle School. So they are also getting a re-roof and new HVAC, kind of like what we're doing with the Campus Mod project, but we're focused on their gym, which is in the worst shape of any of the buildings on the campus. As you can see, it's a pretty big job. It's a pretty big chunk. It's the main gym and also the adjacent locker rooms. They will be getting a new roof, new HVAC, and also you can see guys moving around there that are doing site access work. Again, just like we said with the other ones, state required. Anything I'm missing there, Ray?
Just those giant holes in the roof. Those were originally skylights that had been long boarded over. Skylights in gymnasiums and school roofs are a fantastic idea on paper until you try and keep the water out of the building. Then they become a problem. So those skylights have been a perennial problem for leaking for many, many years, and we are eliminating it.
Ray, I was over there today, and they're doing some site work. They're tearing out a bunch of concrete, and they had to move a bunch of sewer lines. And is that one of your change orders that they didn't know about before?
That's going to be one of our wonderful unforeseen conditions.
Yeah. And they tore out the foundation that holds up that outside awning too. Is that the same
So
thing?
there's an ADA ramp that ties in there. So, and for us to maintain our percentages and our cross slopes, we had to tear a little bit of that out just to kind of blend things in a little bit. Your maximum cross slope on an ADA pathway is 2%, and we're going to need to massage that transition a little bit to make that ADA compliant.
Okay. Any other questions on project updates?
Sorry, jumped the gun there.
Nope, you're good. Okay, let's move on to the next one, Kelly. All right, so just old business. I thought I would share a little bit about the early morning presentation of the annual report. Did you actually last, Richard?
I was there the whole time.
Okay.
I
All
would
right.
ask, yeah, okay, I'll ask Mike a question afterwards.
So anyway, we did present the annual report at the I forget the date.
I think it was the June, was it the June 10th meeting, if I'm not mistaken? Mike?
I believe Kevin started on June 11th, but that's.
Oh yeah, that's
another-
true.
Yes, so it was the June 10th meeting.
And just for the record, the superintendent was willing to move you up, but because you were not running late, but you were basing it on. I mean, so anyways, it just didn't work out. So sorry about that, but for the record, the superintendent was willing to move you up.
Thanks,
And we
Mike.
were
Thanks.
going to take him to the May meeting, and the May meeting, actually, believe it or not, was worse than the June meeting.
That's true.
And so we had said, Kevin, we promise we'll get you in earlier if you take this June slot. Well, earlier was certainly a relative term because it was still quite late.
So anyway, yes, thank you for that. So Richard, thanks for hanging out with me. We did present after midnight. So we did present on Friday the 11th.
Barb was there, wasn't she?
I was there until I realized how long the volleyball presentation was going to take. They decided that was not going to be a brief presentation once they got into Title IX. And so I just said, I thought I got to peace out because that was not going to end anytime soon. And it didn't.
No, it didn't.
Dude.
So anyway, we presented it. Wasn't any significant public comment or questioning from the board, and then we moved on. So thanks to those. Thanks for the support, and we will do it again next year. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
Mr.
it won't be
Pearson.
too many meetings, and I'll be prodding you to start the process again.
So Mike, I have a question for you and Kelly. After we made that presentation, they made a motion to make the meeting last another 2 hours till 3 o'clock in the morning.
It didn't last that long. I started, as soon as I heard that, I started texting the superintendent and saying, we're not staying that long, just so you know.
Did you stay to the end?
I had to stay to the end.
You go to work the next morning?
I had to go to work next morning.
Yeah, but I mean, you get up at like the normal time, or you just come in a little late?
Pretty much. I think I was in by 8 o'clock. I had to cancel 7:30 meeting, but I was in by 8.
Yep. Work on the job site starts at 6 a.m., Richard.
I know.
And typically, unfortunately for us, they go in order of the different offices within the district office, and school planning and construction is always the last one in every section of the agenda. So that includes that last section. So we always have to hang on till the bitter end.
Okay. You bring a
Okay.
copy?
All right.
No, it's too dangerous. Got to sit up straight in the chair.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we move on to bond communications update, Kelly?
Sure. So as promised, I did have a discussion with Q Communications about current bond communication efforts. And we are doing pretty darn good for time. So I was going to show you guys a video that was shared at the district or at the board meeting. That was a communication effort that they are just starting to push out with a little recap on Measure H. So Q Communications put together a video recap that was shared at the board meeting. It's now on the district's website. So if you go to the Measure H portion of the district website, you'll see that video in English and also translated into Spanish. If the committee members here at CBOC like that video and it's something that you guys want to share, we could certainly talk about, sharing it in other ways or any other communication efforts that you guys would like to do. I know the mailer idea kind of fell off the table a little bit because of the price of mailing things out. But I did want to share the video if you guys are game to watch it. It's only 3 minutes.
Sure, let's do that.
All right, great. Give me 1 second and I'll cue that up. Oh, I'm like this. Almost there.
It's good that you muted him, Kelly.
Kelly, I have no audio from Mike in that video.
Oh, shoot. Okay, hold on. Sorry about that, you guys. Let me see what I'm doing wrong.
I thought you did it on purpose.
No,
Where'd that picture come from?
I think it was a drone.
Yeah.
I'm looking, you guys, one moment. There's a way to do this where show in meeting option to turn on original. No. Screen share. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, you guys. I think there's a setting in here I need to change. I need somebody clever in IT like Megan or Rob to tell me, isn't there something I have to do in Zoom that tells it to use my computer audio?
Say that again. I missed that, Kelly.
Oh, I'm having trouble with sharing the audio on this video. Isn't there a setting or something I'm supposed to be doing to share audio? I can't remember how it works.
No, is this on YouTube? Is the video on?
Yeah,
I see YouTube
yeah.
on the bottom. Is the audio turned off in the video?
Could be. Well, no, the odd thing is I can hear it.
Oh.
But I can't, you guys can't hear it.
That's okay. Later.
Yeah, maybe do it another time. So
Yeah, you know what I'll
sometimes
do?
you
I'll
just,
share
you
the
know-
link with you
Yeah,
guys.
just
Yep.
share the
Why don't
link.
we
Yeah,
do
we
that?
don't need to watch the whole
Okay.
thing. Yeah, just share the link.
On the website.
That
Yeah,
will save us 3 minutes and 37 seconds. I'm just gonna say that out loud because we have 7 minutes left.
Sounds good. So if you, just so everyone can see, I'm still screen sharing here. So if you go to the district's main page here, if you didn't know, our governor visited the district, and you go to Measure H, it's the first thing you see right here.
Okay.
So feel free to check it out. Sorry, I couldn't make that sound work. I'm not good at stuff like that.
Okay, that's good.
Apologize for that. So here we go. And we are back to new business.
All right. Does anybody have any new business items for the next meeting that they'd like to throw on the agenda for consideration? Going once, going twice. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, Richard.
Kevin, I have a comment to Rob. Rob, you on? Are you still on? We read the
Yes.
article and paper yesterday
Yes,
about
sir.
the school getting more money from the state. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily yes and no. So
Anyway, no, that's not the reason that's not the comment. The comment was, quoting you, is that the school enrollment has dropped in the last decade, and that's disingenuous. That's not true. I mean, it didn't start to drop until 2018, and it hasn't been a decade. And when you put that out there, people think, "Oh, really? We were small since 2011." It's not true. I've seen your reports, and the schools stayed the same until 2018. Actually, it kept growing. Some of the schools. So I just
have to
think
go look back and look and how the exact quote was put in, but
Yeah.
that was all taken directly from my financial report. So if you look at my financial reports, that's what it came from. So I'd have to go back and look at the exact quote. But I'm very aware, Richard, of when the decline in enrollment started. I appreciate that comment.
It's just misleading, and I think that we don't really want to try to mislead people if we don't have to.
Yeah, like I said, I'm happy to go back, but there's no intent to mislead anyone. I mean, we have very serious declining enrollment. It's been going on for a long period of time. I'll have to go back and look at my graph.
I think
figure out
part of the
exact
thing,
date, but
part of the thing, Richard, that's confusing is the district had been using a total enrollment, including the charter schools, in the enrollment.
Oh.
And what we should have done is what's reflected in the most recent demographic analysis that goes back at least to 16-17 is the school district's enrollment is one line, and then the charters was another line, and that's probably what should have been happening all along.
And there were 3 charters in those days.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that
exactly.
should have been happening all along. So because the charters, I mean, one of the charters the students are not school district kids. 2 of them they were or are, but still the charters operate in a different manner from an enrollment standpoint. But I just wanted to point that out because I think that's how that does get confusing.
Yeah.
And it did. And even we had, I think, Rob, if I'm not mistaken, when we had River and MVLA come back into the district, so to speak, it showed our enrollment kind of having a bump in it because because of the bringing those students back in. That was kind of confusing to the public, saying, "Well, wait, you've been saying we're declining, but yet you have a bump here. What's that all about?" So, anyways, I just thought I'd put that.
Yeah, and so thank you, Mr. Pearson. And then again, so going back to 17-18, I'll have to go back and look at exactly when it started and look at the quote. But when you say the enrollment has been declining over the previous decade, that's true. I mean, the previous decade were 2021. The previous decade it was declining. I mean, again, I have to look at the exact language. I didn't read the article with that type of lens, but you know, the issue is that Napa, again, what's the big picture of what we're trying to communicate in the article? What we're trying to communicate is, yes, there's extra funds that are out there, just like when you said, like, hey, there's these extra funds. Yes, there's extra funds, but it's not covering the cost of the decline in enrollment. And a lot of the new funds that we're getting, they're categorical funds, meaning that they can only apply for certain things and certain programs. So we're receiving a 5% increase in LCFF, which is what you think of as your unrestricted funds, but that's being offset by a decline in enrollment that's more than offsetting that. And then you have statutory costs for STRS and PERS going up in the background. And so it's this huge mixed message for the public that we're trying to kind of like navigate and articulate that, yes, this is it's a good budget because we're getting additional funding per student, but it doesn't help the fact that the people with families in Napa are moving away with school age children because they can't afford to live here. And what does that do to the school district? The school district has declining enrollment. We've closed facilities, and we all know the story. I mean, that core issue has not been solved by this budget. Is what we're trying to articulate.
Well, when we voted for Measure H, the enrollment, according to the statistics, was not declining. Once you passed it, it was. I mean, I've seen your demographic report.
Yeah, that's probably a fairly, that may be an accurate statement. It may have been, fluctuating between 100 or so, but it was, but there was some, but I think some of the frustration was, it's out there, was that there was growth in the district. And the fact of the matter was that was not, I don't believe, an accurate statement that there was growth in the district, because it was pretty static. I mean, it was definitely static in Napa, if not declining. And American Canyon was not increasing. They had not pulled. I mean, if people had went back and looked, they hadn't pulled a building permit for 3 consecutive years. I think it's starting in 15 and 15, 16, 17, 17, 18. So they couldn't be growing if they hadn't pulled a permit.
No, they're just working illegally, Mike.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, maybe. Okay.
And the fact that you might have been misquoted by the paper is not a surprise.
And again, let me go look at that, Richard. I'm happy to look at that exact quote, but certainly my intent is to never provide false information. I'm always about data, but again, when you're talking and having a long conversation with someone, again, I'll go back, but clearly we have declining enrollment. That's really the big picture. We have declining enrollment. This new budget with extra money doesn't solve the district's issue, nor any of the multiple districts across California. It's not just here. You know, again, the decline in enrollment in California students was 186,000 students, and they were thinking that it was going to be 30,000. So big enormous number due to COVID. We're seeing it happen locally where the students that are leaving the district, a lot of them are moving out of state. So big numbers there. So we'll just have to watch it closely.
But there may be a boom, a baby boom, after in 9 months from now.
No.
Okay,
Because of COVID. So,
thank you, Richard.
I do have a question. I just wanted to confirm the September 8th. Is that the next meeting, September 8th? Because it's crossed out on my calendar. I mean, I think it was put on my calendar. So in the agenda.
I'm showing it.
Yes,
I'm showing it September 8th on my calendar.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm double checking mine. I'm presenting right now, so I don't want to mess that up, but I'm looking on my phone right now,
Yeah,
and
there's nothing in August. I have September 8th on my calendar.
September 8th is what I show as well.
Okay, sounds good. All right, got it.
Yeah, it looks
Okay.
like, Barb, you had inadvertently RSVP'd no, maybe.
What?
It looks like on my calendar invite, you have RSVP'd no.
Oh, well, that could be why.
Probably a mistake.
It's definitely a mistake. I can fix it.
Okay.
I'll go back and fix that. All right, thank you for checking on that.
Okay, so for the September 9th meeting, we will be returning to a review of the key analytics financial package and all of the sundry reports and filters that go with that as part of the review of expenditures. We will consider the discussion just now on demographics relative to the Measure Age timeline as a potential topic for next time as well.
Sounds good.
And with that, we will adjourn the meeting. It is 6:02 p.m.